Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to This Will Be Named Later, a podcast about content creators, the creative culture, if you will. Now, this is a part where I act all professional and tell you what the podcast is about, but I'm not really good at being professional, so let's just keep it a buck. And like I said, we talk about creators from all walks of life, from all mediums, modders, podcasters, video content creators, vloggers, bloggers, everybody in between. But more specifically at this juncture, we're talking about wrestling creators because a lot of us are underserved in the wrestling community, but there's a lot of us creating content and a lot of content that needs to be consumed, that needs to be known about, and needs to be discussed, distributed, and brought forth into a bigger light. So I hope that with this podcast, we can do that and shine a light on some of these people that are making dope ass stuff for the wrestling community. And now a word from our sponsor.
OCWFED is a hybrid pro wrestling e-fed that combines elements of role play and competitive play using the WWE 2K franchise. Whether you're on PlayStation or Xbox, OCWFED is a creative outlet for gamers and pro wrestling fans alike. With over 16 years experience producing weekly content and live Twitch events, OCWFed has a thriving community with handlers from all over the world. If this sounds like your cup of tea, come check us out at OCWFed.com, OCWFedTV on YouTube, and OCWFed on Twitch. It's like D&D for wrestling nerds.
Hello friends, coming to the stage is BeBetterGamer, aka BBG, aka Jose. If you ever want to know about the AKI engines, that's how we call it in the hood, but it's really called the AKI engine. This is the man you got to talk to. We go from WCW versus NWO World Tour all the way to Virtual Pro Wrestling Tour. It is Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 rather. It is a wonderful conversation, a incredibly informative conversation. And we touched on a lot of topics. So if you're a fan of the No Mercy games, aka 1999, aka Aki, aka AKI, then you're going to enjoy this conversation. So sit back, relax, pop a cold one, sit nice into your chair, get comfy if you're on the train and or bus or driving, because we got ourselves a journey in this one. And I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much. And let's start the show, baby. Ooh.
Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage. BeBetterGamer, aka Jose, as you heard in the introduction. He is a content creator on YouTube where you can find him at BeBetterGamer. I hope I didn't butcher that. And he essentially does a lot of No Mercy or AKI related content. So let's get on with. We had a nice conversation prior, so we have to hit start. So Jose, say hello to everybody, I guess.
Hello everybody, I guess. What's up, Jay? Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is like our first introduction.
Yes.
But I think this is a great way to be introduced to a fellow content creator, especially like, someone who's into wrestling as much as I am, and there's a lot of us out there, so it's good that we make these connections, and you reached out to me, so I appreciate it. And I'm happy to be in here. I'm happy to talk about wrestling and the Aki games. So I used to say AKI all the time.
I still do.
And
I refuse.
But I was told like, hey, it's Aki because it's a country in Japan. It's a city in Japan. And I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. But every now and then I still say AKI, and I have to like correct myself because I know that one dude's gonna get into my comments. It's actually Aki, and I'm like, I know, but like I still say it because this is how I talk. I'm from Brooklyn. Leave me alone. I talk weird.
As I'm saying, you from Brooklyn, so I'm ignorant. So I've been saying AKI, and if someone corrects me, I'm like, I don't care. So I'm calling it. That's what it is. So I got some questions. So let's go with the questions as all professional like, because that's what we do here at This Will Be Named Later. Because I still haven't had figured out a name yet. So if anybody has any names, by all means, let me know because I need help because it's gonna help me with the algorithm. So anyway,
I actually like that name.
I like it too. But the problem is when you go to search it up, if you don't already, my pen is jangling. If you don't already know, then you're never gonna find it. Because I don't know, it's a strange name. So I guess the first question on the docket would be, when did you become a fan? Why am I saying it like that? When did you become a fan of pro wrestling? Jesus Christ.
As far back as I can remember. It's funny, I get asked this question a lot, especially like when I did my Twitch streams and stuff like that. And, on YouTube, people ask me comments all the time. I can't remember like my first wrestling match. Like, can't remember like, oh, I remember seeing so-and-so fight so-and-so. like all my earliest memories from my childhood, probably from when I was 4 or 5, wrestling was always there. I have I have an Ultimate Warrior wrestling buddy in my possession from my childhood, that my earliest memories are me jumping off the table, doing the Macho Man elbow, recreating the Macho Man Ultimate Warrior, match.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of VHS tapes that my dad had recorded when we would order the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
That stemmed from the 80s. You know what I mean? So it's like even before I was born, because I was born in 86. Okay. But I had like Survivor Series 88 and Royal Rumble 1990 and WrestleMania 3. So that predated me, but I was still watching it as a child. So as far back as I remember, I was always into wrestling, and obviously specifically WWF. And it wasn't until probably like 9 or 10, my best friend at the time, he would pick up WCW because he had cable. I didn't have cable.
The Superstation.
Yeah, I was just watching like Saturday Night's Main Event. Like I was watching and tapes, and every now and then when we could order a pay-per-view or something, but he had cable, so he introduced me to WCW at an early age. And then when I got into my teens, that's when I found ECW. That's when I started tape trading, getting into Japanese wrestling.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So like it's always been a part of me. But like I feel bad because like I can, like people would say, oh, I remember when I saw Steamboat and Macho Man, and that's when I got hooked. Or when I saw later on, the later generation, when I saw Eddie Guerrero and Chris Jericho, or when I saw Batista and Cena. It's like I'm like, yeah, my first match could have been the Bushwhackers. I don't remember. Like I've been watching since I was a kid. Yeah.
I was actually gonna two things. I was actually gonna ask you like what's your age range, because in your video I'm like, yo, you look mad young, and then you're like, oh, my kids. I'm like, wait a minute, what you talking about kids? My man said 86. That's the Latin genes, B. That's that Boricua in you. I ain't got hair on the top of my head because God, decided to take that from me, but I still look good for my age. Goddammit. I'm gonna just say it right now. I ain't much older than you, but still, whatever. Anyway, the other question was, since you was from Brooklyn, right now you're in Buffalo, but the other question I had is, since you're a tape trader, I never tape trades because I don't like human interaction, but did you ever go to the spot? There was a spot in Times Square on 42nd Street. I forgot the name of the actual place, but it was like, once you get off the train, if you cross the street from Times Square, there was a spot there that they had like video games, but they also had in the back section a whole row of tapes for wrestling. So I was wondering if you ever been there. I know it's really obscure.
No, but I mean those were all the spots, right? They were obscure spots. Yeah, they were just all like hole in the walls. No, I didn't go to Times Square.
Which one you went to?
That probably might have been where my friend was going.
Yeah.
I was actually there. It was so weird. The Queens Boulevard Mall.
Yeah, Queen. I think it's Queens
had like a little, had like a little kiosk.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know
how like you go to the mall now and they sell like the cell phone cases.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Someone had, and I think it was I think it was like a woman who ran it or something when I went. But like, yeah, all these tapes. And I remember my friend, at the time, my best friend at the time, he was like, oh, apparently they sell tapes in Queens at the mall.
Yeah.
I was like, really? So I'm expecting like a storefront. I'm expecting something. And then it's like this little kiosk. And then you see like all these like little, like there's like a couple on the table.
Yeah.
And VHS tapes. And they were all like copies.
Of course.
I look at like now people on Instagram post like their old tape collections, and they're like, oh, the Super J Cup, and it has like this nice fancy cover, and I'm like, I didn't have that.
Nah.
I just had like the regular like white label Super J Cup written on it.
It just says SJC on it, 93 or 95. Yeah. I never bought the tapes, but I always used to go with my friend because he used to go. I was like, yo. He's like, yo, you should get the FMW. I'm like, nah, man, I ain't got money for that.
Yeah.
I ain't got money for that shit. But yeah,
the best of Hayabusa compilation. Yeah. Compilations is all I could get. Yo, and they were $20 a pop. They were all $20.
Exactly why I never bought them shits. I was like, I ain't got it like that. Like, you gonna give me $20? I was like, no. Like, when you buy your fucking tapes and leave me alone, get out of my face.
My friend who was into wrestling with me, his dad was in IT, and his dad was like really ahead of the game with technology. So he always had the gadgets. He had a VHS recorder.
Oh.
So he could copy tapes himself. So what we used to do, we used to go half and half.
Yes.
He'd buy a tape, He'd spend the 20, I'd give him 10, and then he'd go home, he'd make a copy on a blank and then give it to me. So that's how I got. Because I didn't have a lot of money.
I had the curve. So
yeah.
So what I did is, I know, like I said, I never traded tapes, but my friend Chris had his pops was also an IT. I'm not doing the one up story. I'm just saying. So his father had access to a T1. Shout out to Homicide Hollis. So what he would do is, like, if we would find the spots where you could download, because you know how downloading was back then, we would download it and burn it on a CD. And I would and I would have a video CD that looked mad grainy or whatever, and I would just watch some, whatever it is. Like not a lot of times, because his pops was like, nah, but whatever. But it's just hilarious, because just similar tracks. So my next question, Jose, is basically, I put you have you said an introduction you had on your actual channel. It said you have a passion, started 15 years ago. So my question is, what is your earliest wrestling video game related memory? AKA maybe what's your first wrestling video game, period?
See, that I actually do remember, because I used to go to arcades a lot.
All right.
So WrestleFest was the very first game I was playing, because that was like the main game they had in the arcades.
Yes.
And there was a supermarket on the corner from where I used to live called the Big R.
Oh, okay.
And when you came in, they had, for some reason, they had like this little alcove with like a few machines set up, and the machines will always rotate. Funny enough, like like I got to play Mortal Kombat there, like a bunch of games there, but they had WrestleFest there for the longest time. And that's my earliest memory of playing a wrestling video game, was WrestleFest, because I always used to want to play it. I don't remember ever being good at it, because like when you're 5, you suck at all arcades games and they just take your money.
Of course.
But I remember I loved playing it, and later on in life, when I went, when I started getting into ROM downloading and stuff, that was one of the first games I downloaded was WrestleFest. So that's my earliest memory. And then pro wrestling on the NES, my friend had. He also had that WCW game on the NES.
Oh damn.
And that was really cool, because that was right around the time when he was introduced to me to WCW.
Okay. So you have a frame of reference, yeah.
The first, I think, wrestling video game I owned was WWF Steel Cage on the Game Gear.
Damn. Yo. That is I thought you were gonna say I thought maybe Super Nintendo. My man said Game Gear. Oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I had a Game Gear. My early history of video games is really interesting, because if it was up to me, I would have had all like the classics on Super Nintendo. Yeah. But it was up to my parents, and they got whatever was cheap, or whatever they saw in the stores.
Game Gear wasn't cheap though. They loved you. They loved you extra.
It wasn't cheap. That's right. But like it wasn't a Game Boy. Not to be spoiled or nothing, but it's like, I want a Game Boy. Okay, here's a Game Gear. They never got me. They always got me the other thing. It's like, oh, I want, like what's a good, or like in wrestling, like, oh, I want this game for the Super Nintendo. Oh, okay, or here's a wrestling game
for Genesis.
But like I don't have this. You don't even own this thing, So, but that was the first one I owned. And the other wrestling games, the Super WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, my friends had. So
okay.
Back in the day, the trick, at least for me, was I didn't ask for games that I knew I could go to my friend's house and play, because that was like my outlet. Like, I'm not gonna ask for WWF Royal Rumble on the Super Nintendo, because I know I can go to my friend's house. But then I could have this game, I could have Steel Cage on the Game Gear, and that could be mine, and I could get that satisfaction from playing that, and then also be playing Royal Rumble a lot. So I kind of have 2 games at once. You know what I mean? Like, that was the trick. Because like I knew I only could get one game, once a year for my birthday or Christmas or whatever. So I did play the Super Nintendo games, Raw, WWF Raw, but I didn't own them. All my friends had them.
So basically what you need to do is you need to tell. So guys, if you're listening, back in the day, you used to visit your friend's house and you would actually play multiplayer games with them in front of you. And if you had to talk trash, you would also have to be in front of them. So you might get popped in the face if you get a little out of pocket. Back in the day. Nowadays,
code of honor. You didn't talk trash unless you could back it up.
Yes.
Don't be a sore loser.
Nope.
If it's not your house,
Respect.
You know, like yeah, there was a lot of. I mean, speaking of
Respect.
WWF Royal Rumble, I never forget this memory. My friend at the time who owned it, you know, we were playing it for a while. He was always better at it than me because it was his game, so he got to play it, you know, all the time. But you know, I was going there every weekend, playing it, slowly getting better. And we start a Royal Rumble match, and I remember right off the bat, he runs at me. And I throw him over the ropes. You know how you could do that if someone ran at you, just threw him over the ropes, right?
Two-dimensional.
And it happened so fast that I threw him over the ropes, and he instantly got up and hit reset on the Super Nintendo so quick,
amazing,
like lightning. And I looked at him, I was like, "What was that?" He's like, "No, that was a fluke. That didn't happen." I was like, "No, I eliminated you. Like you can't do that. You can't reset. I gotta continue on. There's 6 other people I gotta beat." Because there's only 6 people. There was like 8 people in the game. And I never forget, he got so pissed that I eliminated him. So then I knew not to eliminate him. At the beginning of the matches, right? I had to let him kind of think he was winning. You know, I had to kind of work him.
gotta work.
And that happened a lot playing, especially the wrestling games. There was. You know, it's funny you say that because we used to go over to people's houses, right? And you know, we have like, you know, especially when we got to the N64 era with No Mercy. Yeah. But like, people would get really sore because this. My theory is, I call it the best on the block, right? Like you think you're the best on the block, but then like you're only limited to that worldview of like, oh, only people who live on my block play this game. Like, there's a whole great big world out there. So I've seen firsthand accounts. People like their world getting destroyed because they think they're the best on the block, and then I play them.
Or someone's little cousin shows. My favorite is someone's like third cousin over shows up for a minute and starts washing everybody. It was especially violent, like something like Street Fighter 2 or whatever, especially with sweeping with the low kick. But my thing with the WWE games, WWF games back then is like they were so rudimentary compared to something like Super Fire, Fire Pro, especially Super Fire Pro X Wrestling Premium. But my fondest memory was my ex-brother-in-law. We played Raw, and the sounds was like when you step, it goes hurt. So he would just stomp on me, and he would just keep making that noise, and I could never stop laughing. He just beat my ass. He goes hurt. Well, he just beating the shit out of me, like, oh, I hate you. So
you had to be tough good in the game, but then you had to be tough out of game because the trash talking that would happen.
Grown ass man burying a child. All right, so the next one is this was probably gonna be a good one too. What inspired you to create a channel dedicated to Aki games?
Because no one else was doing it. You know, like I started this, I don't know, probably like 5-6 years ago, maybe more at this point, but like in small increments. So I don't feel like I really started putting time into it until maybe like 2-3 years later.
Okay.
But when YouTube was becoming such a big thing with gaming, of course, the thing I wanted to look up the most was videos on No Mercy, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, WCW Revenge, you know, some of my favorite games growing up.
I mean, for a lot of people, dog, yeah.
And what I noticed, you know, when it came to N64, everyone's got videos on Super Mario 64. Everyone's got videos on Star Fox and, you know, Donkey Kong 64 and all these things. And no one was talking about the wrestling games. And to me, these are like the best wrestling games ever made, or, you know, can be argued that. They're my favorite wrestling games. I always like to say favorite. I don't like to say best sometimes because, you know, I don't want to get to debates, but, you know, they're my favorites.
Yeah.
More people should be talking about them. And the few videos that I would see were either like incomplete kind of videos, you know, because again, at the time, the recording stuff from an N64 wasn't easy to do. So there was a lot of inconsistency with what I saw. I didn't see any guides. I didn't see any tutorials. I didn't see any Create a Wrestler videos that I thought were good. And I'm watching. I'm like, you know, I'm just going to make them. I've been playing these games for like 15, 20 years. You know, probably 15 years at that point. Now we're at 20 years.
Yeah. Jesus. Oh, my God.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, I'm just going to make them. If no one's doing them, I'm gonna make them, and I'm gonna make them sort of like for if I was watching them. Like, what would Jose want to see in a Virtual Wrestling 2 video? What would Jose want to see in a No Mercy video? Because chances are, there's fans of those games that would want to see the same thing. And that's what kind of pushed me to it. On the other end of that, like the long-term sort of idea, it was just also a way for me to get into YouTube and making videos for YouTube, because I did have this idea of, I'm going to start out with my wrestling games channel and then eventually also have like a regular gaming channel, because I know the audience for wrestling gaming is not as big as just general gaming, right? And I also had other ideas for gaming. So I was like, let me start with what I know the most about, which is probably these wrestling games. And it's a little bit more focused, you know, because I could focus on this series. I could focus on just these games. But of course, everything's fluid and everything changes. But that was like my also part of my initial strategy was, I'll focus on this, and then I'll get good at making videos and learning about YouTube. And then eventually I can transition and make all these other types of videos. But then I learned, you know, there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
So
it's not easy, dude.
But honestly, I think that, you know, and now what I've, you know, in the past year or so, just opening up from just not just the Aki games, but wrestling games in general, because there's so many different ones, and it is great to talk about all of them. But really with the Aki games, it was like no one else was making videos. So, and it's still kind of like that. Honestly,
it is like that's how I found most of your stuff too.
Wrestling 2.
Yeah.
You search Virtual Wrestling 2, and fortunately, like my video is one of the first videos that come up, you know, introduction to Virtual Wrestling 2. And that's great, because I think it's one of the more in-depth videos. If you look at the other Virtual Wrestling 2 videos that have been around longer than mine, the people who made those videos didn't do any follow-up videos. It's not like they have a series of videos about it. They were all like kind of one and done. Oh, hey, I'm going to play this wrestling game that AJ Styles mentioned. And then like, that's it. You know, whereas mine, I'm like talking about, this is how you unlock Onita. This is how you do this. This is how you do that.
I was going to say, it's incredibly in-depth. And there's like, you can tell that there's a lot of love put into it. And what got me kind of well, actually not what got me, but what you mentioned is essentially you're filling a niche and an underserved market. And, you know, these type of games are, you know, criminally underserved. Like you'll have, like these Megalodon, you know, the Megalodon YouTubers, they'll play maybe, you know, No Mercy like once, like you said, like, and keep it moving. And then maybe somebody will toss it on a stream every now and again. But you actually have a well thought out, you know, approach to these games. And you have like, I don't know, hundreds. Is it hundreds or dozens? It looks like a lot. I'm gonna say dozens, but you know, 9 dozens. There's a lot. You go deep, son. You go deep.
It's in the hundreds. Yeah. It's in the hundreds. A good bulk of that though is from when I was just originally uploading gameplay and just straight gameplay, and that was with WCW/NW Revenge.
Yes.
Because, you know, Let's Plays were big at the time, right?
Yes.
You know, but I didn't have a mic. So I was like, you know, I'll just figure out how to upload, and I'll do sort of these quote unquote like championship runs, these Let's Plays of Revenge, and I'll just do a championship mode for each person. Eventually, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do all of them. I'm gonna do every single person in WCW Revenge. And it took me a while, but that's like a good bulk of like. But then, like when I actually started recording the Let's Plays, right? I was like, I'm gonna do No Mercy, and I'm gonna do a Let's Play for every single championship run, for every single championship. I'm still not finished because that's how many there are.
So there's a whole lot.
It's a whole lot of videos. A bulk of it is because of these Let's Plays around these. You know, in a Let's Play in a regular video game, Let's Play Super Mario, like you gotta collect 120 stars. Like how many episodes can you really get out of that? You know. But me, I'm the crazy one over here. Is like, no, I gotta make sure I got that Bryan Adams TV title run. Yeah, it's just like it's so silly. But that's why I have a lot of videos, because yeah, like you said, it's so focused on these games, because there is a lot of content in these games. You really can still play them today
and get lost. Because there's so much you can do. And I'm still every day. I kid you not, I'm still learning something about these games that I didn't know. Because especially now you have so many people who are like hacking into the games and modding it. Oh my god!
But you're also like just seeing like little details that just got lost over time or forgotten about, and like, or just playing as I played as La Parka in Revenge, quite recently. I never played with him when I was younger at the time because I was too dumb to realize how cool he was at the time. Now everyone knows Laparka's really cool. And I'm playing as him. I'm like, yo, his moveset's amazing. And like,
it plays like him.
Yeah, and it's just like, and it's crazy to like read. It's like you're rediscovering it for the first time because like, who really sits there and plays through every single character in any wrestling game? It's very rare. So that's why I like to show that because, you know, like even like with the 2K games, like they get like what, over 120 people in there. Who's gonna play with every single person? You lose so many details by skipping out on that, and no one has the time to do that unless you're crazy like me, and I don't even have the time to do it. I'm just crazy.
Got a family, Hoop.
Yeah, exactly.
Family at the shoot job. So
yep.
So you kind of answered the other one, which is basically what made you fall in love with a particular medium, but basically just answered that because they're goddamn amazing. So I'll skip that one, but one related to YouTube channel, and we'll just keep this one quick. Did you encounter any kind of obstacles along the way when you were creating your initial channel?
It's always an obstacle. I mean, being a content creator is not easy, as much as people make it look easy. And I'm sure that even the biggest channels, they've had to go through similar hardships. I mean, just everything like, oh, you record something and it wasn't capturing the audio. Or I had this weird glitch where, because I use an Elgato, and I would do like, let's say I would do a Let's Play, right? And I'll do a whole championship run. Let's say I'm playing, Chris Jericho IC mode and No Mercy, and I'm recording it. Boom, it's fine. I look at Elgato. Boom, it's fine, right? So I'm like, okay, now let's move on to the next one. Let's do Rikishi. And then I record it, and I'm recording, and it shows that it's recording in Elgato, and then go to review the footage, and it's just a black screen for like an hour and 30 minutes.
Oh my god.
Or uploading videos onto YouTube, and then it's uploading it in SD format instead of high definition format. Or you notice that when you exported your video file, halfway through it just goes green for no reason. Like,
oh my god,
something
that one I've seen a couple of times.
Yeah, there's just always something, and it could be very frustrating, especially when you only have X amount of hours to work on this. And that was probably the most frustrating thing in the beginning. Was when I first started the channel. I had a full-time job, 9 to 5, had kids, have a wife, have a busy life in general. So end of the night, it's like I only have an hour and a half to work on this. And when I'm spending an hour and a half fixing something, it could be demoralizing, especially fixing something that worked maybe yesterday or maybe worked last week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing too. It's like, maybe I didn't have every night to work on it. Maybe this was my first night in 5 nights that I've been able to work on it. And for some reason, the audio isn't working. I remember one time I plugged in my, I turned on my computer and all my footage was just missing off my external hard drive.
Yeah.
And I almost had a panic attack.
Jesus.
And it was just, fortunately, the fix of all things was just taking it and putting it in another USB port in the back of the computer. And for some reason that fixed it, because technology
is the best. That's like I was telling you before that I had that issue. I had the issue when we were prior to recording. I was trying to record or capture the audio. I was like, why is it not working? And then prior to that, I was getting like the random freezing, which I mentioned about. Like these things, you don't think they're a big deal, but then when you're trying to create, they hit you and you're like, oh my god, I hate everything.
And also like learning all this stuff, like I always said, like, yo, if YouTube came out when I was a kid, I'd be a pro at this. I'd probably have like 3 million, subscribers by now, but because I would have the time to dedicate it. But like learning how to edit, learning how to record audio, learning how to fix audio, all this stuff, that takes time. Learning Photoshop, making my thumbnails.
Oh yeah.
Learning Photoshop, learning layers. I had to self-teach myself everything, and I'm still teaching myself everything. I'm no expert by any means, but I'm definitely now capable. But again, when you only have 45 minutes, an hour to work on something, and you're spending that time figuring out how to make an outline on a logo so that it looks nice on a thumbnail. Like I'll show my wife something, like, look at this thumbnail. She's like, oh, that's great. That looks beautiful. I'm like, it took me 5 hours. Like,
it took me forever.
You know, it's like, you ever seen Parks and Rec?
Yes, I have. I might have said like that. Jesus.
Leslie Knope, remember I forgot his name, when her boyfriend, played by like Adam Scott, when he was working on that claymation thing, and he was like, because he was like going through stuff, so he's like, all of a sudden he's gonna make this claymation video, and then he's like, look, I'm gonna show you what I made, and like he presses it, and like the claymation, like the person gets up and about to take a step, and then it ends, and he's like, that's it. I've spent 20 hours on that. That's how I feel every time when I work on YouTube. I feel like I spend like 50 hours on something for like something that lasts like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
but that's part of the struggle. You know, you gotta just work through it.
But the good thing about that is that you pick up so many, you become like a Swiss Army knife when it comes to just anything, because these skills actually are useful. Like, knowing video editing can be useful.
Yes.
Knowing sound editing and sound engineering can be useful. Knowing HTML, like in my case, I know HTML. I know everything enough to like, lie on a job application if I needed to, but I'm not super comfortable with that. Like, hey, they work at AEW. I could do video production. Here's all my After Effects. Look at the graphics. Shit like that.
I was thinking about that the other day, because I was like, I gotta update my resume, and I was thinking like I could probably put on a video editor, because I was editing on a Mac for the longest time, and I was using iMovie, and then recently I got a new PC, and I'm like, oh well, how am I gonna edit my videos now, because there's no iMovie on PC? And so I was looking around like, what's free, what's good, and I found Shotcut, right? I never used it before, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make my decision basically like, if in an hour I'm figuring it out, then I'm gonna stick with it. And it was actually like within an hour I was figuring it out, all because of my previous knowledge. I didn't look up any tutorials. I just kind of knew like, oh, this is this. It's just a different program, but things are placed differently. And then it also had like different things that I recognized from when I had to learn OBS, or when I had to learn Photoshop. Layers. Oh yeah, I know what that means, or I know what this means. And I'm like, yo, I just learned how to use this editing program in a day. I could probably put this on my resume that I know how to edit on any video editor, like at least basics, Yeah,
as long as you put the keyword is basic or rudimentary.
Yeah,
because people try to get you. Like, well, just put this show. Like, no, I don't know how to do that.
It's like when everyone used to put Word on their resume back in the day. Like, basic Word. I know how to type.
107 words per minute, dude.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's true. Like you said, it's you learn these skills. You're learning the language, and then you just have to basically like translate it to something else. Like, I could probably be a social media manager, because I've been publishing stuff on my social media. I don't have 1 million followers, but day in and day out, like I know how to type, I know how to, not chase trends, but I know how to keep track of trends. I know how to operate something like
teach me when we're off with this. When we're off with this, teach me how to chase and follow trends. I need that kind of information. But yeah, my bad. But so I got another one for you too. I got a couple actually. So all right, I don't know how this one's gonna make you feel, but I'm gonna hit you with it anyway. Have you ever tried Day of Reckoning? That's the first part of the question. Have you ever tried the Day of Reckoning series?
Yes, actually, that was a like sort of donation goal when I was streaming pretty regularly on Twitch about a year ago. I had never played Day of Reckoning. I always say that like the Icon games kind of like ruined me in terms of like wrestling games.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, like, arcade, NES, Game Gear, I was playing all these different type of wrestling games. And then by the time I got to No Mercy and Virtual Wrestling 2, I was like, I'm good. I don't have to buy any other wrestling game.
Damn.
And I did it.
Bold.
In the GameCube, I was playing Super Mario Sunshine, Metroid Prime, Xbox, I was playing Halo. So I was using that time in that generation to play non-wrestling games, because like I play Virtual Wrestling 2 every day. I don't need to buy Day of Reckoning. I don't need to buy this. So, and I kind of regret that, because I didn't, grow up
spiritual
with sort of that
successor to No Mercy. That was the second part of the question. That's why so go elaborate. Did you wind up getting it, and did you enjoy it? What do you think?
Yeah, it was like a donation goal on Twitch, and it was like $10 or whatever. I got off of eBay, and it was great. And I played through the Day of Reckoning 1 season mode or whatever it was called, and then I played through Day of Reckoning 2, same thing, like the season mode. I enjoyed it. So hot take,
Go ahead. Yes, that's a question there too. But give me the hot take. Go ahead.
Everyone's like, oh, it's the spiritual successor of No Mercy.
Yes, he's
Virtual
gonna do
Wrestling 2.
it. He's gonna do it.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's a good game.
So tell me why.
It's a good wrestling game. It's probably one of the better wrestling games that I missed out on that I went back to play. But it's not. It doesn't have that. There's an intuitiveness to the Aki games.
Okay.
That I always keep coming back to.
Okay.
Right? And it has to do with playing a wrestling game in general. My sort of like, if I were to write a dissertation on these games,
I think you should at one point. Honestly, I'd read it. No, that's not even blowing smoke up your ass. I'd read it because you got the passion for the joint. I would call you one of the 4 pillars of Aki. Honestly, that's my new gimmick now, as adding people to the 4 pillars of something. So you would definitely be one of the 4 pillars of Aki.
Oh, that's funny. I mean, I'll take your compliment, but like, there's so many people who do so many crazy things with the Aki games, with like modding and hacking. I just ramble on and on about it, but it doesn't matter though. It's
you have just because you can't like program and hack moves, which is amazing. We'll get into that later, but you have a general love and passion for this series. So you just accept it. You are one of you only one pillar, so it's fine. It's 3 other pillars. We could pick someone else from the pillars. So accept the pillars.
Am I Kawada? Can I be Kawada?
You could be Kawada. I don't want
to be as bold and say I'm Masawa and Kobashi. But I mean, I could play people the game for that. But look, Day of Reckoning is, first of all, the creative wrestle mode isn't that hot, right? But that's not the game's fault. I don't think so, because it's not the game's fault. It's not the game's fault. Wrestling games, the 2K games finally reached a point where the creative wrestlers look like the other wrestlers in the game.
Okay.
But after post N64, the games that started focusing on more of the realistic graphics, when you would go to make a creative wrestler, they wouldn't look like the other wrestlers in the game.
Yeah, you're right.
And that always bothered me. And I felt like there was things that they were purposely leaving out so you couldn't make people quite exact. Like, I remember I was trying to like look up a good Bret Hart call, and I was like, yo, like, there's none of these tights look like Bret Hart's tights. Did they purposefully do that? Did they purposely take out tights so that they're not like, Bret Hart or whatever, or like the faces, like there weren't a lot of face options because, again, at that time, they were just, capturing everything. So then you would have to do the whole like, we got to shape the face. And the technology at that time wasn't like how it is now, where you could use that and make really good looking faces. You make the faces and they just didn't look as good as like the actual scan, The Rock or Hurricane or whatever. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. I got you.
So I don't think it was the game's fault. But gameplay wise, I just didn't feel it wasn't as smooth as the Aki games, doing high flying moves was really tough because they never stayed down. The AI was very inconsistent. I remember, oh my god, I rarely quit on games. I rarely give up on games. There was one, and I think I might have even saved the stream. There was one, I think it was in Day of Reckoning 2, where you had to do like a 4-person tables match. It was like a handicap match, and just trying to set up the tables, trying to get the person to stay on it, trying to put the person through the table, and then there was a time limit on the match. And I think in the first Day of Reckoning game there was the same sort of a similar situation with a steel cage. Like the AI just always took you off the cage, and it was like a 4-person handicap, and I was like half hour time limit on these matches. And then the time limit would go off. I would save up my special so I could hit all 3 people with my special. Start climbing the cage, and they all just get right back up. It was like little things like that became so frustrating when you started to put the time into it. And that's the thing I keep coming back to with Aki. I can keep playing this game for 20 years because I've put in so much time for it, and I haven't reached that point where like, I really see the holes in this game. I really see the flaws in this game, because there's not many that ruin your experience of the game. With Day of Reckoning, I was streaming it for about 2 weeks, And I was already starting to pick it apart. I was starting to notice a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of flaws. It's not a bad game.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's not something that's gonna last 20 years. Like if someone handed me Day of Reckoning or Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, I'm gonna pick Virtual Wrestling 2 every time. Because
I knew we was gonna get this kind of answer. This is why we ask the tough questions here at This Will Be Named Later. I knew I was gonna get that answer. I felt it in my soul we gonna get that answer. Yeah. I'm very proud of that answer. So I got plenty more. So next up on the list, this is kind of a varied question, so we'll keep it quick. Which of your videos to you is your favorite and why? Because you got a lot. So
I got a lot. You know, I worked really hard on the Stone Cold Steve Austin Stuns No Mercy video, as well as like the Goldberg Spears Everyone in Revenge videos. And I think they're like some of my favorites that I've done because of how much time I put into them. You know, like if you're making a compilation of Stone Cold having to do the stunner, that means you had to play every match. You had to.
And if I don't know you that well, I don't actually let me not like I know you for years. From what I've gathered, I figure you're playing the match. You're like, let me get another stunner in there.
I'm playing it all the way through. I'm playing it on expert. So I'm playing it like I'm really playing the game.
The kids fed. They went to bed. All right, fuck it. We whatever. I got 9 minutes. It's fine. I got like 7 stunners. I'll pick whichever one I want. And that was just versus. I don't know.
Just getting in and out and quitting. Yeah, like I have to win the match. I have to win. I can't just do the stunner, pause the game. It's like, okay, I got the footage. It's like, no, I gotta win the match, and then I gotta win the match with the stunner. I can't just win like I don't roll up. Yeah,
Al Snow can kick. Al Snow can kick rocks. He's getting stunned a couple times. Recording it.
Yeah. Why is he getting right back up? I just gave him the stunner. My special's running out.
So, quick sidebar.
Those are some of my favorites.
Quick sidebar. So. You mentioned basically how we were talking about their reckoning for a second, but when you crank up the AI on any of the Aki games, it is ridiculous. So I want you to because you have me until you're like, oh, but then you crank up the AI on the Aki games, and it is a recipe for Nintendo 64 crunching the debauchery. Like it is pure nightmare fuel and rage inducing.
So a lot of people say that, and I agree to a certain extent.
Okay.
But I think I have to remove myself from that debate because I've been playing it so long that playing it on expert isn't that hard. It's not like a humble brag or anything for me. It's just that I've been playing this game so long that expert to me is kind of easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just
so you
because I put in the
yeah.
It's like watching a speedrunner play, Mario 64, and they go through the game in like 10 minutes, and it's like I spent 5 hours on that level. But that's because again I figured the game out because I've played the game so long. I know how the computer plays. It's still hard for me though. I can't sleep on it. Like I can't play blindfolded. I think Virtual Wrestling 2 has the best AI. Because it's hard but fair.
Okay.
But WCW Revenge is hard and kind of broken.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
that's
same thing with WrestleMania 2000. Trying to win with a submission in WrestleMania 2000 is very hard to do. But they fixed that for Virtual Wrestling 2 and No Mercy. No Mercy, I think, is like the easiest of all the Aki games.
Really?
Wise, I do, because the game's a bit more slowed down. And all you gotta do is just train a couple of hours fighting X-Pac and Road Dogg in a handicap match, and you'll really figure out the countering, because they just throw out the strikes, so you get your timing down really well with them, and then you sort of pick up the speed of the game. But they don't, the AI doesn't kick out. Like you could win game matches in still sub 2 minutes in No Mercy if you know how to do the right succession of grapples, and once you get that special and you hit your special twice, the AI will stay down. You know what I mean? So it's just about swinging that momentum in your favor. There is a mechanic. I think what makes the game hard for a lot of people is sort of like the hidden mechanic. I don't even know if there's a real name for it. I always like to call it the comeback special.
I've never had a name for it, but that's what you talk. Yep. Like you winning, and then it's like, fuck you. Now you're losing.
Sudden, yeah, and then you notice that the AI, their meter is rising twice as fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just limited to the AI. They did sort of program it in it that it can happen to you. And I don't really know what kind of triggers it. I used to think what triggers it is that if you hit a special on the opponent and you don't win, like if you get a false finish, that triggers it. But that doesn't happen all the time. I think it's just eventually when the game sees that one person is losing, right? But they're still hanging on. All of a sudden, they give them this secret boost where they're special now. Everything they do raises their meter twice as much. And it's in the game. You can, like, when you play it, you can see it. It's like, why is it all of a sudden he's doing a weak A grapple and his special meter is going up? It's not supposed to. That's how you know they have a comeback special.
And that's how I know you're one of the pillars of Aki for that. Because I know exactly what you're talking about, but my theory used to be that it might have been tied to damage. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it was maddening. Like, because you keep them low, and they still like hulk up. Like, what are you talking about? I'm beating your ass. How are you dodging that kick? And then you get clothesline, and they just start busting your shit, and it's like, God damn it.
And honestly, I think it came from the fact that the developers of Aki, there's a Japanese company. The bones of the games are built on Japanese wrestling, right? Because Virtual Pro Wrestling 64 came out simultaneously with WCW World Tour. And what's really fascinating, you look at both those games and you realize they took out a lot of stuff for World Tour.
Yes.
Because they took out the roster, but they took out also a bunch of other stuff. Because what's beautiful about the series, I think, because some people say, oh, they took out features, they took out this. But what I like is that because they made it focused on who their audience was. They weren't going to make a Japanese wrestling game for WCW fans.
Yeah.
And the same thing for WWF fans. But things like the spirit meter and the comeback specials, I call it, that's ingrained in Japanese wrestling because at the time, and even, I say it probably persists in all of wrestling now, but at the time, Misawa would hit someone, drop someone on their neck, go for the pin, and then you get that big false finish. And then he'd hit his tiger driver, and then the person would kick out, so then he'd have to get back up, go for the tiger driver. Oh, he countered the tiger. That was happening in Japan first. You know what I mean? So that spirit, that comeback, meter, I think is based on that fighting spirit that was very present in Japanese wrestling at the time, whereas in America, finishers were protected. You got hit with the stunner, you're done. You're not kicking out.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everyone kicks out, of finishers, both in Japan and in America and Mexico. But I feel like the game represents that time of Japanese wrestling, of having that comeback meter. And they put it in the game, but they kept it throughout the whole series. And then that's why you have those frustrating moments where it's like, no, I hit you with my finisher. Why are you getting back up? Why are you countering me all of a sudden? And I think it's because the developers, laid the groundwork for what they saw in wrestling over there. That's just my theory. Again, I could be making it up. I would have to talk to Gator-san about it.
I'll take, like, when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm gonna defer to you or Gator-san. But so it's funny that you brought up Virtual Pro Wrestling 64? Yeah,
Virtual Wrestling 64. That was the first one. Yeah, and then Virtual Wrestling 2 was later.
So the one I never bought 2. I bought Virtual Pro Wrestling 64, and I remember I went to Fordham Game World, right? Shout out to Fordham Game World in the Bronx.
There you go.
And it was like $75 at 64. I brought it home. I had to translate via GameFAQs, and I noticed I know, like, I don't know what it was, but I didn't know that one and was it WCW versus NWO World Tour. I didn't know that those two, or was it which one you said it was?
It was World Tour.
Yeah, so I didn't. Tour, I think what it was is that I played World Tour. That's what got me hooked. I played World Tour, and I was like, yo, I'm gonna have spoke to. I played World Tour in where the hell was it in Queens? Oh my God, Forest Hills, Queens. My friend had it on SD4. His friend brought it in, and we played. And I was like, because I was a WCW fan. I was like, wait a minute, what? There's a video game? And I was like, yo, this is. It was 4 players. It was mad fun. And I was like, all right, I need the N64. Went to my man Papo. I was like, yo, you have N64, but you don't play it. Can I buy it from you? He was like, okay. I gave him $75, and then I gave him $75, a couple weeks later. But I remember, since I didn't have World Tour, I was like, yo, let me just get the because at one point It was 64, and then a couple months later, then Revenge came out, right? Or did Revenge come out a year later?
A year later.
They were close.
A year later. They were all a year later about. Mm-hmm.
So I bought 64 because I didn't want to get World Tour. So I bought 64. I wanted to get World Tour later, but I bought 64 and I was like translating it and everything. And I'm like, yo, it's like World Tour, but they had 64 had the striking system, right? Or was that
yes,
2?
Because they had
the striking system.
Technically, Virtual Wrestling 2 had like the more in-depth striking system where like you could actually create the people, and they had the MMA system.
Yes.
But the sort of striking system was always there in the beginning. Only certain people had it though. And in World Tour, you can unlock like a faux Muhammad Ali kind of character, and he had the striking system, but like he was like the only one in the game who had it. But in Virtual Wrestling 64, several of the people had it because you had a lot more mixed martial arts people in the game. So a lot of mixed martial arts people had that striking system. But again, they took out all those characters. So like Joe Boxer, I think, or whatever his name was in World Tour, he's an anomaly. It's like, why does he only do punches? Why does he only do punches? And then you play Virtual Wrestling 64, it's like not only do they do punches, but they do like kicks and strikes and all this other stuff. And then combos. Yes. Revenge is where we got the combos grappling system from, where you would grapple someone. Goldberg had it for some reason. You would grapple, and then you could do these like martial arts moves in Revenge. Nagata had it as well. And then it was missing completely from WrestleMania 2000, but Virtual Wrestling 2, they brought it back. They added the full MMA grappling system, and then you could also create the wrestlers with it.
Yeah.
But it's funny.
Also, go ahead.
But it's funny going back because like, I played World Tour first, and I borrowed it from a friend, and me and my friend fell in love with it. We just thought it was the funnest game to play.
It is. It was.
We knew no one looked like how they looked, but we didn't care because it was so intuitive. You just pick up and play, fun to play, difficult to master, and we just spent hours and hours. So Revenge came out, and we were like, gotta get Revenge. And we both bought Revenge like day one and played a bunch of Revenge. Then WrestleMania 2000 comes out, and gotta get WrestleMania 2000. But at that time, around WrestleMania 2000 is when I started getting really heavy in Japanese wrestling. Yeah. And my friend had discovered Fire Pro before that. And he imported Fire Pro Wrestling G on the PlayStation. So we're playing this Japanese wrestling game on the PlayStation that he like modded his PlayStation to play. And I'm thinking, he had both the PlayStation and N64. I only had the N64. And I was like, I wonder if there's a Japanese wrestling game equivalent to, just a wrestling game, a Japanese wrestling game, like how Fire Pro is on PlayStation. There's got to be something. And I'm looking up in like the AOL chat rooms, and I discovered Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. I saw screenshots and people talking about it. Oh, go to GameFAQs. Ice Master, he's your man. Yes! So I went. Yep. So I went to the Elizabeth Center Mall in Chinatown. You ever been there in Chinatown, the Elizabeth Center Mall?
And wait, Elizabeth, that's Jersey?
No, in Manhattan. In Chinatown, the Elizabeth Center Mall. There was like a import video game shop in there. Yes, it had all these games.
What's the name of it?
I don't even remember the name.
Oh my god, I know what you're talking about.
It being at the Elizabeth Center.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can see it in my brain, but I can't. Oh my god, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I remember going to the guy. Yeah. And I remember going to the guy. I knew you appreciate it because you're from the city, so you probably walk down those same streets. But like I remember going and asking like, hey, do you have Virtual Wrestling 64? I want to buy it. He was like, yeah, we have it. And he was like, but the sequel's coming out in a few months. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, they're making a sequel. He's like, I'm a big fan of the games. And he was like telling me about it. He was like, you should just wait for part 2. I was like, oh, okay, sure. I'll wait for part 2. This guy knows what he's talking about. So I waited a couple of months, come back. You got it? No, not yet. End of the month. Got it. So it came out in January. And he got it like right towards the end of January, early February, right? He got it really close to when it launched. Yeah. I paid $100 for it.
Sounds about right, yeah.
$12 for like the little adapter that you put the cartridge on top of.
Where'd you get the adapter? He had the adapter, or
he had it too? Of course he had it too. Yeah, he had it too.
Yeah, I ordered my joint online. I forgot the spot. There was a spot for order imports back in the day. Oh my god, I wish I knew the name of it. I used to get all the imports. I'm sorry, continue. Got caught up.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I couldn't order. My friend ordered from online, but I couldn't order from online because my parents wouldn't let me do that, so I had to buy everything cash. And I saved up. So and that's why also like going back to the Aki games, like every year I got an Aki game, and that was like the only N64 game I got, because back then it would be like $80 for a game.
Yeah,
no
joke.
And then now an import game, $100 for one game. It was the most expensive thing I had ever bought. And it was the best thing I ever bought in my like gaming history. So it's funny that you mentioned you got Virtual Wrestling 64 first, because I almost got Virtual Wrestling 64 first, but Virtual Wrestling 2 is what I got first. And that's like, it just blew my mind. And it was I was using the translations from GameFAQs, but since I had played so much in WrestleMania 2000 and the other Aki games, it was so easy to just go into it and play. Mm-hmm. And to this day, I kind of have the whole game memorized because of those GameFAQs translations, because I had a little binder. I printed everything out. I organized everything in dividers. It's like, okay, how are we going to do a Royal Rumble? All right, let me look it up. All right, there. And but I have it memorized now. And people to this day are like, how do you do the I'm like, and I still tell them to this day, go to GameFAQs. Go to GameFAQs, man. You don't need to learn Japanese. Just go to GameFAQs. Play for a few hours. You'll develop that muscle memory. It's not that difficult. Kids today, man, they need their YouTube videos for everything.
Lab in high school. Put the GameFAQs thing on a floppy disk. Put the floppy disk in Lab in high school. Yo, where the teacher at? She ain't around. All right, print it out. Like 60 pages.
Yeah.
just run out with 60 pages.
Yeah. Who's printing something?
Exactly.
No one.
On the dot matrix joint. On the dot, and then you get the little hole. You get the little hole puncher. The single stroke one. You make sure your holes ain't all that crooked. Mm-hmm. Oh my god!
I had the cheap little like 99 cents 3-hole puncher, but you can only do like 2 sheets at a time. You do 3 sheets at a time, you're breaking it.
Yo, I had the single joint, so I had to make sure my shit was all fucking, it was all crooked. All my pages are all crooked. Yo, and but the funny thing is, like doing the translation was like so much fun, like because basically if you had 64 or if you had Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, you was gonna rename everybody to their American name. That's what I did.
You had to rename everyone.
So I was renaming everybody. That's how you learn. It's fun.
That's how you learn. Like I probably knew like maybe like half the people in that game at that time. Because I was just still getting into it. I knew a lot of the junior heavyweights, and I knew a lot of the All Japan people. But I didn't know a lot of like the legends. I didn't know who Tenryu was. I didn't know who. I didn't really know who Abdullah the Butcher was. I didn't know who Stan Hansen. I didn't know who a lot of these people were. I knew some people, like I knew Muda because he had shown up in WCW, but I didn't know who Kensuke Sasaki was. I didn't, and so like having to go in and change their names, you remember them. Yeah. And it's like, okay, because I'm putting in Jay Akiyama, okay, and then you go to your Queens Center, mall, and it's like Jun Akiyama compilation. It's like, he's in Virtual Wrestling 2. I guess I'll buy this, and then I bought it. If it was today, you just go on YouTube and you look up everyone, and then you can find all their greatest hits. But I was slowly learning everyone because of that game. And I always like to say, like, that game helped me expand my knowledge of wrestling around the world, because you weren't seeing these guys on TV. There was no local stuff. And then finding tapes of them was hard. So I'd pop every time I'd see, like, someone from Virtual Wrestling 2 in a wrestling compilation I just got.
Those are the times, man. Oh, my goodness. So, all right, we got some other ones left. So, I'm gonna just read it verbatim because I wrote this down and it looks so professional. Beyond Frame, have you tried any other total conversions for No Mercy, like WCW Feel the Bang, WWF Legends, NXT TakeOver, Forever Indie, Showdown 64? Any particular favorites? Wow, I'm corny. Go ahead.
No, that's a great question though, and I love the delivery. So before I got into the YouTube game, I was on a Mac, right? Yeah. And as I got into the YouTube game, everyone was turning me on to all these mods. Can't run them on a Mac.
Nope.
So to this day, I still haven't tried a lot of those mods firsthand. I've only been able to try Freems, and the reason why I've been able to do Freems Virtual Wrestling 2 because it's not necessarily mod, it's a ROM hack that you could run on the EverDrive. And I have the EverDrive.
Yeah,
So
that's the joint you put on
N64.
that's the joint under the N64, right?
Yeah, so I play it directly on the N64. Now, all the mods you got to run on emulators on the PC, and I didn't have a PC. There was always these workarounds, like, oh, if you install Wine, or if you install a VirtualBox, or if you do Boot Camp, I didn't have time to do all that stuff and learn all that stuff. And like, now I got to learn how. So like, I'm kind of lazy when it comes to gaming, which is why I always gravitated to consoles more than PC, because there's always extra work with PC stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Console, it's like you turn it on, it works.
That's
PC,
exactly.
turn it on, oh, now you gotta change the resolution. Now you gotta turn this. Oh, the controller's not working. Now you got map, you know. So with the mods, I had to jump through so many hoops because I was on a Mac. Now I'm on a PC, and the only thing keeping me from playing them is time. And I what I wanted to do, and I still want to do, is actually make videos for all those mods on my channel and like do in-depth reviews, sort of what I did with Freems.
Yeah, that's the only one I saw.
Because again, you hear about these mods, so you look them up on YouTube, and people aren't really making videos that I think are you know, give a good sort of like, they don't get you to want to go out and play these mods. And I want to make videos that get you to go out and play these mods, just like Virtual Wrestling 2 Freem Edition, which is actually one of my like most popular videos on my channel. And I'm glad, you know, Freem put a lot of work. And again, he reached out to me. He was like, hey, I know you're into Virtual Wrestling 2. Would you consider this? I know that you play EverDrive. And that's how we kind of like worked. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be very honest. If I don't like it, I'll say I don't like it. He's like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. And I did like it. It was great. And I loved the hard work that he's put into it. But I also love that like my video, again, is one of the videos that comes up. Because again, you see a lot of people putting these videos of these mods. Like Showdown 64, it's like I try to like look up stuff for Showdown 64, and like I don't really like the vibe of some of the videos that they're putting out, or people don't focus. Like the WCW mod came out, and I watched this one video. He's like, "All right, we're gonna play as Arquette." It's like you got all these people in this game, and you're gonna choose David Arquette as your first person, and then he doesn't know how to play the game. And he's like, oh, what's the button? And it's just like, no, I can't watch videos like that.
I had to watch a video for Feel the Bang to figure out how to install it properly. It is when you get a chance, like when you ever sort stuff out, I think you get a kick out of it. The one thing though is, you know how you mentioned in Day of Reckoning how they had these ridiculous challenges? Feel the Bang has those, but they're like, you do those to unlock certain characters. And some of them I'm sure you'll excel in. But the one like to unlock Ric Flair, you go, oh my God. I was like, yo, I can't do this. But for something like you, you'd be like second nature.
And I saw that, and I was like, I gotta do a whole video series on these.
It's fun.
Unlocking all of these.
You'd enjoy it.
I don't think someone's done them all. You know what I mean? I think to this day, someone hasn't done like a full series of all of those unlocks.
Yeah.
And you know, that's where I step in. Like, all right, I'm gonna cater to that audience.
You should. I recommend Feel the Bang, and then since you like the old school WWF stuff, WWF Legends is also really, really good too. There's a lot of love in those.
Those are the ones that people always name drop. And I know WCW Feel the Bang is more recent, but you know, Legends has been around for a little bit. And like there's more coming out too, which is just so beautiful to see.
There's a lot. There's
a lot coming out.
It's exciting. Like it's a good, like you said, it's a really solid wrestling joint. So maybe we'll get another hot take from this question. So let's see if we get another hot take. This question might affect me because anyway, whatever. Not about me. There's a friend Melon who might listen to this. He might just start screaming as soon as you talk about this one. So anyway, what do you think about Here Comes the Pain?
I haven't put enough time into it.
Fair question. Moving on.
I can't. No, I can't. I'm not the kind of person like where I play a game for 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, it sucks. You know, again, it came out during an era of time where I was playing GTA. I was playing all this stuff because I was nice in my little Aki bubble on the N64. So I was like, I only have limited money to spend. I'm going to spend it on other games. So that's the one game everyone talks about, right? Here Comes the Pain. I played it on my stream. But I think what happened was that it was like when I finally got around to playing it, it was right before something, and I switched games because of that. Not because I wasn't enjoying the game, but it's like I don't know if it was like the G1 or something. So like I used to like to play wrestling games that coincided with certain things, or maybe Fire Pro was being released. I think maybe Fire Pro was coming out, Fire Pro World. So I think I just switched over to Fire Pro, but it's different. It's different, and I don't think that if I did put a lot of time into it, I don't think I can judge it in comparison with No Mercy or the other Aki games, because it's very clearly doing its own thing. There's no one way to be a wrestling game, right?
Nope.
So I don't try to say, oh, Virtual Wrestling 2 is better than 2K because of this. It's like I judge them based on merits of wrestling games. When you say a game is a successor to an Aki game, that's when you can get more to like kind of debate and be like, oh, I don't think Day of Reckoning is. You know what I mean?
Sure. I love that take, by the way.
But with Here Comes the Pain, it's drastically different. It's more fast. It's more. People like to throw around the term arcadey. I don't know if that's the best term for it, but it's just a faster paced game, more actiony style, more. We're playing loose and fast, and I think that ties into the modes that they offer, which I found very fun, because it's like at one point I'm playing it, I'm like, why am I like by a fountain and there's a helicopter and like I'm doing all this crazy stuff? I'm like, this is, like my initial reaction is like, this is stupid, even for wrestling terms. Yeah. But then like 10 minutes into it, I'm like, this is fun. I can see myself playing this with a friend or two and just having a blast.
Yes.
And I think that's what's great. I didn't get to like go through the whole season mode. I didn't get to like unlock everything. That's where I feel like the meat and potatoes of the games are of wrestling games, because again, you start spending a lot of time for wrestling game. Are you gonna start getting tired of it, or are you gonna start enjoying it even more? And I haven't put in enough time in SmackDown Here Comes to Play to make that call. But I don't think comparing the SmackDown Here Comes the Pain game is a fair comparison to the Aki games, because they're two entirely different engines. I think you can make more fair comparisons with everything else Ukes has done after SmackDown Here Comes the Pain.
Fair.
And the SmackDown versus Raw series and how they differentiated from that game. I think you can make more even comparisons there than two entirely different wrestling engines that are both good in there. Because again, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, I played it and right away I had initial like, this is good, this is fun. So I'm sure if I put more time into it, I could like compare it better to other wrestling games. But I also can't say like, oh, it's one of my favorite games, or I hate it, because I haven't put that much time into it as much as I would like.
Yeah. So I got a follow-up joint. So the follow-up is, what do you think about the current climate of wrestling games like Fire Pro World, the WWE 2K series? We'll leave it at those two, because basically that's really all there is right now.
That's all there is. That's all there is.
I mean, the future, the follow-up question to that. But for now, we got. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And but in the future looks hopefully bright.
Yes.
I made a video recently on my channel about the AEW wrestling.
Smiling mad loud. Like, yo, this kid. My man's like, this man. Like, damn, son. I thought you was like, oh, look at this kid. Like, I got kids being like, oh shit, you old as fuck. You mad old.
I got a lot of comments in that video.
That's that good genes.
The people who were following me for a while, they were like, damn, you look young.
You look young as fuck, B. I was like, hey, he's a baby. He's a baby. Yeah. I got kids, man. My shoot job at the factory lifting weights.
It's rough making these YouTube videos.
It's hard making these videos and raising these kids. Now, one of them is in college right now. God damn it! Like, damn, bro.
I feel older than I look. Let's just leave it at that. I feel my bones feel older than how I look.
Facts. So yeah. What are you thinking about the current climate right now? Let's talk about the current climate. Yeah.
I think we should be just grateful that Fire Pro World exists.
Yeah.
Because I come from the era where we were told Fire Pro Wrestling Returns was going to be the last ever Fire Pro game.
Yeah, you're right. Oh my God.
When Suda showed up and he was like, I'm helping reboot Fire Pro, I was like, what? Why isn't this a bigger deal? Because again, wrestling games are like in their own little sort of genre of games.
Yeah.
So I think it's a huge deal that Fire Pro Wrestling World exists. I love it. I think it's a great entry of Fire Pro. You could say it's the ultimate version of Fire Pro because it has everything. And Fire Pro games have always had everything. And they didn't really take out anything except for like maybe certain modes that, you know, maybe smart modders will figure out how to put back in, but I don't think they're essential to the core Fire Pro experience. But I think it's a great iteration of Fire Pro, and probably Fire Pro Wrestling World is like the Super Smash Ultimate of the Super Smash Brothers series. You know what I mean? Like, people are gonna say, "Oh, Melee is the best, Brawl is the worst," blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, you look at Ultimate, and it's like, come on, guys, it's got everything. Just let it be. It's got everything. It got Same thing with Fire Pro Wrestling World. Like, my favorite Fire Pro probably is Fire Pro Wrestling D. But I'd be a fool to just keep playing Fire Pro Wrestling D all the time, because I can literally do everything in the world. I can make every wrestler. I can make every outfit. Now we can make moves. We can make every move. Yeah, the game's gonna last forever.
And parts and entrances. But let me ask you, why do you enjoy D that much? Also,
it's the way it looks.
Really?
I think it's like kind of like Pokemon to me. It's like, I have nothing against with the new art style, but there's just something about that sprite animation that just speaks to me. Like, Fire Pro, just when I think of Fire Pro, I just see sprite animation. Yeah. And Fire Pro Wrestling D, I felt was at the time, the best sprite animation of the series. Even when it got to Returns, they pulled back from that, and they used a little bit more 3D over the sprite.
Yeah.
And I wasn't always a fan of that.
Okay,
I wasn't always a fan of that. So I don't think it's bad. It's just different. You know, same thing with Pokemon. Like, I think it's cool that it's in 3D. Part of me wishes there was a little button you could press and it went back to sprites, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair assessment.
And D, you know, it's like nitpicking. It really is. The timing in D is just a little bit different than the timing in World.
Okay.
But that's something that feels a little bit more, I don't know, it resonates with me a little bit more in D than it does in World. Not saying it's bad. It's just a matter of taste.
It's a matter of taste. My man got taste.
You know, it's like the AKI games. Like, you can't definitely say which one's the best, because they all have like their little subtleties and differences, and it really is you, the person, and your personal preferences that translate to which game you're going to enjoy the most. But World has everything. Like, you can't knock World. I wish I played World more. I really did. I got all the achievements on the PS4 version, and then I was like, I'm gonna get all the achievements on the Steam version, and then I'm gonna like do all the crazy stuff people would do on the Steam version, and just lack of time. But I really wish I was putting in more time into World. Because it's great. It's great that we have it, and it's great that we're gonna continue to have it in this generation. Because here's the thing: people were keeping Returns alive. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And to keep it alive in a game that didn't have any online, any sharing of calls like online or creative wrestlers online, like you had to go and download templates in a very obscure way. And the fact that people were still customizing and making stuff. Now you have a game that's kind of future-proof, because you can make moves, you can make outfits, you can make faces that look exactly realistic, and it's a game that you can always keep coming back to, because much like the AKI games, I think the mechanics in the Fire Pro series are kind of timeless when it comes to wrestling games. Two very different styles of wrestling game engines, but I think both speak to the heart of what a good wrestling game aspires to be. Now, to go back to the question about the 2K series.
And I use 2K. I've been using the damn series since 2004, and now we got the 2K games. And you know how hard it is to run a league with a 2K game? It's difficult. It's rough. Jose, it's tough, but we've been doing it. Rough. Shout out to OCWFedTV, goddammit. Sorry.
It goes back to my thesis of what a great wrestling game should be. A great wrestling game should be intuitive. And what I mean by that in terms of wrestling games is the only people who buy wrestling games are wrestling fans. Yeah. It's not like that with any other video game, because you could pick up maybe a Madden and be and you know what football is, and be casually into football, but you're picking it up because it's just fun to play a football game, right? I don't think anyone does that for wrestling games. I don't think someone goes in and buys WWE 2K19 and then they're like, oh, cool, I'm playing as, John Cena. Don't know who that is, but whatever. He's my favorite in this game for some obscure reason. Like, that doesn't happen.
Nah.
That doesn't happen. At least with like a sports game, you're going to you might not know about the teams, but what are you gonna pick? You're gonna pick.
I want to play as Mahomes, baby. I want to play as Mahomes. And you're absolutely correct.
So with that in mind, right? If you're making a wrestling game, you have to know your audience knows what wrestling is, but also knows. So within a minute, they should know what they're doing. And what do you do in wrestling? You grab your opponent and you hit your opponent, and then you hit your finisher and you pin them. And that should be intuitive. You shouldn't have to be able to look at a manual. You shouldn't have to be able to pause the menu and see where you have to go to set up your finisher. Oh, he has to be turned back to you, and then you got to grab him. And then at the same time, but you can't tilt the analog stick. If you tilt the analog stick, you do a different move. And then you got to taunt at this special time. If you don't taunt at this time, that's it. You got to wait. Then you bank it. If you want to bank it, you can press LB. It's like all I feel like they added so many layers to actually play the game that it takes away from what the spirit of what a wrestling game should be. You know what I mean? And that's my issue with the 2K games, is that they're going for this sense of realism. Hey, guess what? Wrestling's not real. Like this is what? Art. This is entertainment.
Well, you talking about Jose? What? What do you mean? What? Undertaker retired because he has to go back to the hell? He has to go back to hell. What are you talking about? It's not real. Fuck kind of program is this?
And I think that's what they have to speak to the heart. I like that effect, by the way, that you do. That's really great. And that's what they got to speak to the heart to. I spent a lot of time with 2K19 because I was streaming it, but also I wanted to enter the AJ Styles competition. I had to beat the tower. And I hadn't spent a lot of time with the 2K games before that, so I had to learn how to all of a sudden beat them on the highest difficulty in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
So, and go through that tower. And that tower wasn't easy. And it wasn't easy because I wasn't that the opponents were challenging, is that I was fighting the game. I was fighting the game more than I was fighting the wrestlers in the game. I had to the matches that you had to win via submission, okay, in the tower, for example. Like, you really did have to set it up specifically. You couldn't just work their leg because for some reason it was kind of broken.
It's like Mortal Kombat, basically.
Yeah, it was kind of broken where it's like I'm working this dude's leg, but he's not tapping. It's like, oh, I gotta hit my special before he hits the leg. Oh, but guess what? He's always gonna counter my first special. Like, there was just things you noticed that were just in the game automatically that took me out of the fact that I'm playing a wrestling game and the fact that I'm like kind of looking at like the Matrix 0101s to figure out when I should do what where. And you see that online, and I know you run a competitive channel.
Yeah.
Competitive players, high-level competitive players know that, because even when I was playing like quote-unquote competitively, when I was going online playing against people, I knew what everyone was going to do in a way, because you had to do things at a certain time in order for them to be executed well. And you probably know that from experience.
Yeah,
it's like I know that I'm probably gonna have to. It's like a mind game, right? With the other player, it's like, oh, he sees that I have a special, but at the same time, if you understand the game enough, you know there's only really a few moments where you can really hit that special effectively, where it'll work in your favor, and then the other person will know that.
Pretty much.
It takes away that spontaneity that exists in the other wrestling games that you see, like Fire Pro or the Aki series or SmackDown Here Comes the Pain.
I mean, go ahead.
No, because then, like I was gonna say, it just becomes sort of like a race to who can get to this point in the game before the other person, as opposed to actually winning because of like you're actually more skillful than the other person, or you outthinking them like a fighting game would do. And I know wrestling games are different from fighting games, but that's when you're having human players go against each other, that's sort of like the essence you're trying to get. And I feel like the 2K games lack that. They're not missing it, but it's not as strong as it should be.
I hear what you're saying. So, like with us, well, we had, because it's gonna be a third year, we've been using this platform, the 2K19. So we're hybrid, which is essentially like if you play like a cheese ball, you know, people who are watching the stream are gonna be like, "You're garbage, please go away." So basically, everyone tries to kind of, and we've tweaked the rules and everything to make it so that, you know, you want to have a good match. You also, you know, the better player is going to win because they actually know better. But we've actually implemented rules to add more spontaneity and some more dynamic events. Like we have a rule called sudden death, because the way we work is, when you're red, that's when you can go for a finisher and the match. With sudden death, you can basically end off any pin attempt, as long as if they can't kick out. So what that adds is, instead of having these pins in the middle of a match, be flavor pins because you only can win when red. Now you can win like at the start of the match if you can get that pin in, which makes people stay on their toes. And we're testing it now this season. It's actually kind of working out more or less, what it's supposed to do, because people are like, oh, I gotta be on my toes, I gotta be whatever. But for the most part, these games, or at least this particular part of the series, the 2K series, is very more fighting orientated. So you have to do things and make tricks to make it more like a wrestling game, to the point as you said. And with the AJ Tower series, the guy who won, that weird fella, when he went to go play AJ, we watch our like site watched that match, like that we were all screaming, like he just like, you're not fucking playing wrestling. What are you doing? This is not Street Fighter. We're like,
he cheesed them, yeah.
Yeah, we're just like, oh my god, what is this garbage? Like, we were all disgusted with it. Like, this is not, this is what the game is. It's like, ugh, we have to fight. We have to fight to make it not be that, and it sucks.
Yeah, you're fighting against the game. You're fighting against the game, and it speaks to the passion of the wrestling game community, right? Mm-hmm. Where the 2K fans, they don't hover around the wrestling game because they think it's like, oh, the best wrestling game ever. They want it to be the best wrestling game ever, and they know it has a lot of shortcomings, but they're trying their best because it's all they have.
Yep.
It's all they have, and it's unfortunate because I do think a lot of what goes into getting the wrestling games made by the 2K series, and even a little bit before that, it was almost like what happened with WWE in real life when the competition was gone. It stagnated. It didn't grow.
Yeah.
As long as the dollar sign, as long as people were gonna keep buying it, why should they change anything? Why did she make anything better? And that's kind of what you have with the WWE games. It's like wrestling fans are gonna watch wrestling and support wrestling no matter what, and especially like WWE fans, because it's probably all they know, or it's the biggest thing of the thing they love. I had to do so much legwork to watch other types of wrestling back in the day, right? But I still watched WWF. Why? Because it was the biggest. It was around. You could watch easy. It's that accessibility. But when you have something that stagnates, it can be so frustrating because you want it to be great and you're not watching it to rag on it. You're just watching it because you want it to be great. The same thing with the 2K games. I felt the whole time playing 2K19, I was like, I want this game to be great, but it's just missing so many things. And part of the fun of wrestling games is playing it with other people, because again, it's not just about, I want to see who's better. You're playing it with other wrestling fans, because those are the only people who play wrestling games. It's not like when you play someone in Street Fighter or Tekken. They could really be into Street Fighter, but they could also love RTS games, or they could also love Minecraft. There could be a whole other things they could love, and you could find so much more, other common ground in that sense. But or maybe when they play Street Fighter, they only play one character, so they only know how to talk about one character. But when you play a wrestling game with someone, you're not just talking about that wrestling game. You're playing and sharing your love of pro wrestling in general, and that's the bond you share when you play with other people. But then, like you said, when you have to institute all these things, all these rules to just make the game fun to play with other people, that's kind of a problem.
It is.
It's like, and then that's why you go back to the old classics and you want to play the old hits, because it's like, I want to play 2K, but when I can pick up and play other wrestling game that works or that satisfies that competitive edge that I want to have when playing against a friend, I'm going to go there. And that's what's so promising about next year or the year forward, because it's not just the fact that we're getting all these other wrestling games, but hopefully 2K and the people behind the next iterations of 2K will start to get creatively challenged and start to actually work on their game, knowing that there's other options for people to play, because now someone doesn't have to just go buy 2K if they're into wrestling.
Thank God.
And I was hoping something like that would happen with Fire Pro.
Yeah.
I would hoping like Fire Pro would really take off, but I think Fire Pro still turns a lot of people off because it's got a little bit of a learning curve. it's not as intuitive as the Aki games initially, but eventually you get it. But I think people just love simming in Fire Pro anyway.
Simming in Fire Pro is the best.
When I discovered that I was actually playing Fire Pro all these years, and then like 99% of the people were like, no, we just sim the matches.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys don't play it? Like, no, I don't want to play you. I don't know how to really play the game. I just sim it. Let's just sim our created characters. I was like, oh, okay. And 2K, I think, is trying to bridge that gap. I think 2K is supposed to be like a simulation and an actual game you play at the same time, but it's not. You got to pick one. You got to pick one, you got to put all your energies into one.
The problem with the 2K games is like, it got to the point that because they're not that intuitive, people do what's called simming. And depending on who you ask, that could be a good thing or a dirty word. For me, I've learned over the years by actually talking to sim people that, I don't hate it. It's just not my cup of tea. But whereas, our guys in OCWFED will compete and actually, actual competition, these guys will kind of more like not even work a match, but basically take clips and edit them together to like look like a match and stuff. And that's really popular with this demographic. And if you go, like, my feeds usually fill with a lot of these stuff. Some of these people are cool. Some of them are fucking weirdos anyway. But the point is that it's crazy. So, they kind of like sim matches that way. And, it's really popular, as opposed to like competition used to be the thing. Like play versus play used to be the thing back in the early 2000s. Now it's like, I'm like the last of the Mohicans. So it's like, it's crazy. But, it's because, like, I think it boils down to the games not being, like, that intuitive and that fun. And then to the other point, one of my best players, shout out to Melon, who's also, like, an amazing gamer and a scientist. So shout out to him. Nice. We played Here Comes the Pain on stream via, what's it called? I forgot what it's called, but we were able to play each other online. He had so much fun playing Here Comes the Pain. We had so much fun that he retired from 2K19 because A, it was slower, B, he didn't have fun, he didn't enjoy it. He's like, yeah, I'm not. It's like me playing this with you was like, I can't play 2K19 no more. So all he does now is write. He'll write for us because we do text and videos and whatnot and matches. So he writes now, but it's crazy. And he's one of the best players. He doesn't care. It's not fun for him, which is, it is what it is. Like, these games need to be fun, which brings me to probably my last little go around, because without kind of overstepping what you said in the AEW video, but like, how do you feel about the landscape moving forward? Because we got the AEW game, and Kenny was using them words to he's doing that dog whistle, he's doing that Omega dog whistle. I don't know, man, because Samoa Joe had that same whistle with the TNA game, and when that TNA game dropped, I was like, Samoa Joe is not my best friend no more. I don't want to be friends with Samoa Joe no more. You lied. Samoa Joe lied to me. Man.
Well, he didn't lie. He didn't lie. Here's the thing: Samoa Joe and I think it was AJ Styles.
I think it was AJ.
And also like Christopher Daniels. They were like,
he didn't know. Daniels didn't know.
We want this game to be like No Mercy, but they're not listening to us. And they basically said as much. They were like, we told them, go look at Virtual Wrestling 2, and then they were like, yeah, okay, sure. And then that was the last of it. We never heard. And then by playing the game, we could tell they didn't look at Virtual Wrestling 2. They didn't care.
Yo, everybody had the same damn body slam.
I played the TNA game on stream too. That was an experience. But here's the thing, and that was actually something brought up too. It's like, every wrestling game that comes out, they're always drop the No Mercy, because it's like they're dangling that carrot.
Yep.
They want people to just come. And I said, okay, but no one got Gaeta-san. No one got the lead director of not just No Mercy, but all these Aki games. Or most of them. I don't think he was the lead director for like the first two, but he was the lead director for all of them. So that's like, to me, that's serious, because it's like, I think a lot of people have reservation because Ukes is involved, and Ukes has been hit or miss their whole entire career. Let's be honest. It's like some games you're like, oh yeah, I love SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain. And then it's like, what was SmackDown versus Raw 2013 or whatever, like 2012.
All right, so quick. I'll give you the quick history. So SmackDown, the first SmackDown was basically arcade. The second one was arcade with more characters. The third one was like, okay, there's more mechanics or whatever, a lot more fun. Here Comes the Pain is basically the gold standard. 2006 is like, okay, we'll keep the arcade kind of play, but we'll also add simulation elements, which is a good combination of it, depending on who you ask. Except High Flyers, it was hard for people to stay down. And then as you progress, you get to this weird pace. The sweet spot for them, I think, is somewhere between WWE 12 and maybe WWE 13 or 14. I don't remember, but we had a really good season one time, and it was using one of those games. I think it might have been WWE 12, and that's when they had the sweet spot. They had a really good camera that was in. The game was snappy. It was responsive. There was all kinds of moves. You can do all kinds of stuff, but yeah, you're right. They're hit or miss. But you have to remember though that this is under the umbrella of WWE. We're like, well, you can't do that. You can't do this, and then we have to keep it like that. Da 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 da.
Yeah, there was definitely probably a lot of shackles in their development, which probably was a reasoning for the inconsistency year to year. Because when they wanted to maybe focus on something, they were probably told, "Oh, but this year you got to put a House of Horrors match," or So, and that takes time from development, especially when you're doing an annual game. So, I think that under new guidance, having someone like Gaeta-san and having someone like Kenny Omega and other people involved who are very clearly like, this is our vision. This is what it has to be. Let's not, a lot of people are like, oh, but it's just Kenny Omega. He's a wrestler. Like, he is the executive vice president of a company. You go to EA, and if the executive vice president of the company is like, this game needs more jetpacks, that development team is going to go back and add jetpacks to the game just because of that one guy. So it's like if they bring this game to him and he's like, guys, I stood up on stage and I said this has to be like No Mercy and Virtual Wrestling 2, and I'm not feeling it, they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board. This game is not gonna come out until it reaches a level of standard that Kenny Omega has already declared to the world, and he got Gaeta-san to ensure that it was gonna happen. So my hopes are positive. What I mentioned in the video is that, like, I just hope people aren't thinking this game's gonna come out fast.
Hell no. Hell no.
But in that time, because you're talking about the whole landscape of things, we do have quite a few things coming out that I think are gonna, again, diversify the wrestling games landscape, and maybe my hope, show that wrestling games can be popular, they can be profitable, because the wrestling game audience might be to make wrestling games in general fun to play, even for non-wrestling fans or just casual wrestling fans. Because going back to the N64 games, I have a brother-in-law who came over one Christmas recently, and I was showing him my EverDrive, and he was like, hey, you got that one wrestling game from back in the day? I used to play that all the time with my cousin, because back then everyone watched wrestling, right? Everyone watched Raw or Nitro.
Yeah, of course.
And it was the only wrestling game, and it was a world tour. That was the only wrestling game he ever played. And we're playing it, and he's having a blast. This is someone who doesn't keep up with wrestling since like the Stone Cold era, Yeah. He casually knows. But as a gamer, because he's really into games, as someone who understands what a good game is and what having fun is, he could still jump right back into that game and have fun. I think that's what's missing from current wrestling games, is that not every wrestling fan necessarily plays the wrestling games, but I'm sure a lot of wrestling fans play video games in general, and they could differentiate what's a great video game and what's not a great video game. What's a video game I'm going to spend my time with, and what's a video game I'm not going to spend my time with. And I think with more different types of wrestling games coming out, you'll probably see more people take a chance on other types of games that are hopefully really fun to play. And then the gaming industry can look at that and be like, oh, like maybe this is a thing. Maybe we can keep pumping out. Maybe we don't have to just have the WWE license to sell a wrestling game. And I think that's what's great about having AEW. That's what's great about having Fire Pro. That's what's great about having these indie developers who might be sitting on the next big indie hit that just so happens to be a wrestling game.
Gotta give them shout outs real quick. Ultraviolence, my man Gakdor. Mark out wrestling from Spot Callers, aka oh my god, this Spot Callers. What else? And Mark, actually, it used to be Spot Callers. Now it's Mark Out Wrestling card game. I got it right. I think so. Hopefully, Retromania and also the Wrestling Code. Whew.
Yep.
Shout out to all y'all.
Retromania one and the Wrestling Code ones are also ones that I really have my eye on, because again, Retromania is harking back to WrestleFest, right?
Yes.
It's harking back to that arcade pick up and play. We live in an age where a game like Fall Guys, a game like Among Us can trend based on things that we kind of all know about, right? Fall Guys is basically all those wacky, reality game competition shows where people run through obstacle courses. Yep. Among Us is, I know people have different terms for the game, but it's basically murder. It's basically that game you played as a kid where one person's the murderer and like you wink at the other person and then they die. It's like, oh, who's the person winking?
Clue,
it's that, yeah, Clue. So wrestling, I think, has been sort of coming back into the mainstream language, if you will. It's been coming back sort of into the pop culture world since the Attitude Era. It's coming back. You're seeing a lot of these NBA athletes who watched wrestling as a kid showing up with Undertaker shirts. You're seeing someone like The Rock is the most popular person on the planet. You have a Netflix series, Glow. You have all these documentaries on HBO. So it's coming back. And I think if you're sitting on a wrestling game that some popular streamer decides to stream, and then they're just having a blast with it, that can blow up. And you have people swarming to that game because they want to be part of that experience. That experience, which, if you're a wrestling fan, exists because you have memories of sitting with your friends on a couch playing a wrestling game for hours on time. Just like how people today play games like Among Us or Fall Guys or Fortnite. I'm not saying a wrestling game could be as big as one of those games. Hopefully, who knows? But I do think that, especially with a lot of the indie teams, if you are going to be a little bit more bold, but focused on the fun of what just makes these games work and that sort of social connectivity of a wrestling game, that can translate to more eyes being on it and more games being successful and more wrestling games appearing because of it. We only have the big indie boom that we do now where all these games sort of have that retro feel because you had a lot of indie games take that chance. You had your Super Meat Boys, you had your Braids, your Limbos and stuff like that. And now all these games are sort of derivatives of that. Who's to say these indie games that are going to try to take what they remember from the WrestleFest, from the AKI games, they hit on something that all of gaming resonates with. And I think that's what's most exciting. It's not just that, AEW's got a wrestling game and they're going to go against WWE. It's like, I want to see a game blow up. I want to see a wrestling game blow up. And if these wrestling games focus on the fun, if they focus on the pick up and play, easy to pick up and play and get into and understand because you know what a wrestling match looks like. But I also want to spend time on this because it's making me keep coming back and making me want to get better on the game. I think that's just going to be, a beautiful thing to see. WCW NW Revenge was one of the highest selling games on the N64.
Yeah, I remember. Oh my God.
It's like top 10. And that's like next, that top 10 list is like Mario and the rare games, you're talking about Mario 64, GoldenEye. Yeah, exactly. See, right away, we both said GoldenEye.
Yeah, those are the goals. It was GoldenEye. It was Mario, GoldenEye, Star Fox, WCW vs. NWO,
and WCW NWO is sitting right with them. I'm sure 2K does well enough every year, brother. They're not breaking into the top 10 of a console's lifetime sales.
1 million. 1 million is the last one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good by video game standards. Sure, but like, you're talking about capturing like the zeitgeist of video game fans, and like that's something that and that's why I think a lot of people also in real life, when they talk about real wrestling, they always reference the Attitude Era because it permeated everything we saw. Kids were going to school and you saw it in school. It was cool to be a wrestling fan at one point.
Yep.
And like now I feel like we are slowly getting back to that. Like, you're starting to see wrestling be appreciated in a different lens nowadays. But I think a lot of that is because of the not WWE attempts. And it's funny because I feel like the same thing might just happen with the wrestling games. The wrestling games that are going to blow up are probably going to be the not WWE ones. And then WWE is going to try to copy it, and then they're going to say they did it first.
The funny thing about... I think the reason, one of the reasons is definitely because they got WWE got tired of Ukes and they gave them the kibosh, and in doing so hamstrung themselves to high heaven with that abomination of 2K20. we're not gonna talk about how garbage that is because I get PTSD and I start yelling. But to wrap things up, but I think when 2K20 shit the bed, a lot of people started saying we need change, and then all of a sudden, he's like, hey, we're working on this, hey, we're working on that, hey, we're working on this, and now everyone's coming out the woodwork, and it's beautiful to see. My only concern, well, actually, I shouldn't even say it's a concern, but Brian Williams, he even on Twitter today, he had a little thing. He's like, hey, how important is creating a wrestler? And everyone's like, yes, it's a very important. And Brian was like, yeah, I kind of knew. So to iterate to the Japanese developing end of it, like, hey, this is important. So it's gonna be interesting. The only thing that bugged me, and see, I remember when I was watching it, some people were like, oh, it looks like Battlegrounds, son. I was like, yo, it does not look like Battlegrounds, you fucking mama. It looks, if you want to be like whatever, it looks similar to All Stars. It does not, because people using the caricature word that was called, and I got a GED, so I don't know what the hell that meant, but I was like, I'm talking about, it does not look like Battlegrounds.
It looks like Def Jam.
Kinda, yeah, almost.
Jam. It looks like Def Jam.
Almost, right?
Jam
it has a it has a stylized thing. But the problem is, that's the problem. But the good thing is, when you have stylized graphics, because No Mercy, the Aki games, they're great. But because the graphics are the way they are, a lot of times, people do that. So even when they do the high res textures and stuff, it's still the same kind of look because it's an old game.
64 game.
Yeah. when they're when you have stylized graphics, those wind up being timeless because even though they look a certain way now, when you play them 5 years from now, 10 years from now, World of Warcraft. For Christ's sakes, the expansion came out yesterday. Yeah, I took some screenshots. People like, oh, it looks kind of, it looked like that since 2004. That's the point. That's the purpose because it's a timeless look. So with what they had with AEW, I'm like, that's a good look to it. Sure, it can be some changes here and there, some tweaks, but the only thing that bugged me, and I did a video about this, was when Hikaru Shida came in and she kicked Kenny and there was a sound wave on his chest. I was like, no sound waves. Why is there a sound wave? Why is there a sound wave? She kicked him. I don't want a sound wave, Kenny Omega. You send no mercy, Kenny Omega. You send no mercy. This looks like NBA Jam. I want Kenny, no. So that was my only quip.
That's he did name drop.
That's what worried me though,
and stuff like that.
That's what worried me.
That's why people were getting sort of you just said it, not Battlegrounds, the other one,
All Stars
vibes. I think honestly, I think that was just put into the trailer for effect. It's sort of like the Street Fighter trailer where everything's really animated and you have all these flashes, and then you play the game and there's a little bit of that, but not really all that.
But when they have the exchange,
this is so early.
Yeah,
alpha.
It is.
I think that was just I don't even think we saw the game running on engine, honestly. I think we saw the game running as sort of like a cutscene, like this is what we're aspiring to be.
Yeah.
Because and I think I mean, look I mentioned in my video, but look at Cyberpunk, man. Cyberpunk is still not coming out, it's just now coming out actually, but game development is long, game development is messy, and you go back to the drawing board, but sometimes you announce your game too early. But sometimes you have to announce it early so that people can kind of calm down. And Kenny Omega and everyone, ever since AEW was formed, everyone was like, well, you got to have a wrestling game, Yeah. So I think their hands were kind of tied because it takes a long time to get all that up and running. And now that they have it up and running, it's this is kind of the announcement for the announcement. I think in a year from now, hopefully we'll see more footage. The gameplay that is actually in the game was at the very end when you saw the character models doing the Meltzer driver.
Yeah.
That was the gameplay. It wasn't the Jericho and Omega fight and Shida coming in. It was that small little tiny animation of the Meltzer drive. That's the game they're working on.
Hand drawn, baby.
The other stuff is gonna come after. So will there be maybe special effects and stuff? Maybe. Who's to say? Will that ruin the experience of the game? We don't know yet. We don't know.
I love your optimism.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta. I mean, as a wrestling fan,
Yeah,
you
oh my
have to be
God.
optimistic.
Been
I mean,
burned
that
so
comes with
many
the
times,
territory.
Jose. So many
I'm-
times. You know how hard
I'm
it is to
only
run a
go-
competitive league, Jose, when you have these shitty games sometimes. It's difficult, Jose. It's
You
difficult.
have to be optimistic.
Oh.
I'm gonna watch Survivor Series only because I'm hoping for the best.
Oh man, yeah. I
But
won't say anything, but yeah. Oh.
I do think the fact that it's coming out and it's coming out the way it is. But again, it's not just AEW, and I want to make a sort of a follow-up video on it, talking about all the other wrestling games coming out, talking about wrestling games past that have also getting lost, because we don't talk about Saturday Night Slam Masters enough.
Oh man, yeah.
There's a lot of different style
yeah.
of wrestling games that sort of gotten lost to the wind because we've only ever known WWE, and you can say the same thing about wrestling in general. Like, for the longest time, people only ever watched WWE and only knew WWE because they didn't want to do the legwork like that I did or you did of finding other wrestling. But now, because you have accessibility, you can see all the different types of wrestling easily online. That's where we need to be wrestling games. We need to have all these different other types of wrestling games to show that there's other types of wrestling games out there, and they might harken back on past wrestling games that people haven't played. Like you mentioned it sort of a little bit before. It's like, the what was his name? The competitive player. He had never played Here Comes the Pain, right? And that's because he only knew the 2K games, and then he goes and he plays this old game that he never played before, and he realizes, oh wow, this is different.
Oh no, he played Here Comes the Pain. It's just that it's been so long.
Oh, it's been so long.
He had might as well never have played. It's been so long that he actually had fun playing with somebody else. Not like, oh my God, I have to win. I mean, he whooped my ass. He's a goddamn pro level gamer. He be doing those 2D platform games, and I'm watching him play Contra. I'm like, how are you doing this? He's like, scientists have to be good at. You're like, all right, whatever, man. He's ridiculous. Shout out to Dicobros on Twitter as well. He's fucking insane. I'm sorry, but yeah, it's the fun. Like you were saying, it's actual fun. Having fun with the wrestling game. We need to have fun. We need that for these games, and your passion for these games has given me some reinvigoration, and we will be touching on this in the future if you would like to be returned. But for the meantime, now we're gonna wrap things up. I want you to tell everybody, my fans, and hopefully your fans and every other fans in between, because sometimes the videos do excellent and people just come from all over the place, like, who that person? And tell them where they can find you, tell them everything, give them all your plugs, Jose. Oh, your plugs.
Yeah, I definitely hope, I'm definitely going to spread this on my social media, which is at BeBetterGamer on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, that I don't really use at all, but it's there because I had to lock it in so no one else takes it.
Yeah, smart.
But I'm most active on Twitter and Instagram, YouTube, BeBetterGamer Wrestling, but I think also if you just put BeBetterGamer, it comes up. And that's really all I'm active on. Well, Twitch, I was streaming regularly on Twitch, but obviously because of everything that's going on, I had to kind of stop because life got in the way. But my Twitch channel is still there, twitch.tv/BeBetterGamer Wrestling. Very easy. So like you can find me everywhere, BeBetterGamer, if you look. And I hopefully a lot of people who watch my stuff is listening to this and they give you a follow on Twitter, OCWFed, and check you out on YouTube as well. And get more of that cross-pollination.
I think it's called
cross-pollination.
There you go. I got my words
because
sometimes.
Here at the end of the day, we're all wrestling fans. Whatever our favorite wrestling video game is, or our favorite wrestling game company, to the rest of the world, we're weirdos because we like wrestling. I've been
to the cons, Jose. I think we all right. I'm gonna say from us, I think we okay, man. See, you look like you ain't funky, so I think you good too. You go to the cons, you know what I'm talking about. We were talking about that today. We went to WrestleCon. Con funk is a real thing, and it's strange. It's strange. I don't understand how wrestling superstar Virgil kind of smell like onions. It's weird. I don't get it.
I mean, come on, it's Virgil.
Yeah, right. Let me talk about Virgil.
I'm just saying, wrestling, like you said, it's a niche. It's a big niche, though.
Yeah.
And we have to be optimistic, right? We have to be hopeful, because if these games fail, we're not gonna have any other wrestling games.
We're just
It's
gonna
not
have
like
WWE.
you know, if the latest Mario game doesn't do well, right? There's still gonna be all these other platformers that come up. If Call of Duty doesn't do well, there's still gonna be all these shooters that come out. But if our one wrestling game doesn't do well, that's it. We don't get it anymore.
I mean,
we're done.
you know, I mean, to be fair, 20 was garbage, so now they scrapped it, and everybody's like, we could do better. Thank God. So maybe life finds a way, like Jurassic Park, and I think we'll end with the Jurassic Park quote. So thank you so much, Jose, for coming on, and everybody else. Hey, you want to be a guest? Let me know on Twitter. OCWFed, hit me up or whatever. It's all good. Have a wonderful night, and that's a wrap. So I want to send once again a thank you to Jose, aka BBG, for coming on and having a good old conversation and helping me learn a lot. And we hope to have Jose again in the future discussing some other things that I find interesting as well. And that being said, like I said a second ago, if you want to be a guest, hit me up on the Twitter at OCWFed. Probably the easiest way. You hit me up, you add me, I'll probably add you. You send me a non-creepy DM, and then we can go from there. And you can be a guest, have a good old time with me as well. Won't you like to do that? I want to do that. You should do that too. Or you can check me out on Gmail at OCWFed@gmail.com. I'm done shilling. Have a great night. Peace out.